Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Okay, okay, very good. Very good. Sorry about Thursday. We were told not to give classes on Thursday because of El Mawlid al-Nabawi, as you know. So we are having it today, and we will continue. Okay, let me just accept some of the people joining us late. Actually, not late. It's supposed to be now. All right. Shuruq, Muhammad, Zaqut, Hiba, Uthman, Siham. Okay. Sujood, Wafa, May, Asala. Okay, everybody's there? Everybody can hear me? If you have a problem hearing me, okay, all right, good, good, thank you. Okay, let's just wait for a minute, just 1 minute, okay? And then we take it from there, all right? Just 1 minute, just to make sure that everybody is there. In the meantime, you have a look at the screen. In the meantime, have a look at the screen. We have the text there. Okay, I'll show you. I'll play my camera, all right, so that you can see me as well. All right, can you see me? Am I?
Yes.
Okay, good, good. So you can see and you can hear. Very good. So at least you can read the body language, especially when English is a second language for all of you, or most of you, I think. All right. Okay, nobody else is waiting. Nobody. Okay, if you look at the screen, remember the last thing we talked about. Okay, am I recording? I need to make sure that I'm recording. Sorry. Yes, yes, I am recording. Okay, so we can start now. If you look at the screen now, the last thing we discussed, if you remember, was, of course, you remember Tif Korea and what he predicted. He didn't want Diwana to go to France because he knows what it would be like, because he told us that he spent 20 years in France. He fought for France during the Second World War, when France, you know, in the Second World War, France got occupied by the Nazis, by Germany. And so he didn't want her to go there because he knows that she wouldn't be treated well, and that she would be exploited, And as we said last time, this is a metaphor for the relationship between the white French colonizer, represented by the family, the Pochet family, and Africa, Senegal, the colonized world, the black world, represented by Diwana. And it's that relationship between the colonizer and the colonized can never be a relationship of equality. Am I clear? That, don't forget this. Relate this to Palestine. My relationship with Israel can never be a relationship of equality, because they are the colonizers. Israelis are the colonizers. Israel caused the Nakba, which led to the ethnic cleansing of most Palestinians from the land of sad oranges. I'm taking you back to that story. And now, Diwana, moving from the margin, or the colonized world is the margin, I want you to know these words, or the periphery. All right, the colonized, I'm writing them, periphery. France is part of, not the periphery, not the margin, is part of the colony, or the center. The center. Clear? So we have also this metaphor between the center, represented by the French family, the white French family, and the periphery, Africa, the colonized world. Think, I want you, while you are listening to me now and looking at me using my body language, just to make sure that you understand what I'm talking about, think about the relationship we have in Palestine now between white Ashkenazi Israelis, white Ashkenazi Israelis, and us Palestinian Arabs. Okay? A relationship of oppression, yeah, oppression, exploitation, exploitation. Diwana gets exploited by the French family. Diwana, when she's in Senegal, she doesn't know that. She doesn't know. She's not aware. She's not conscious of her own exploitation, that she's being exploited by the madam and the monsieur. All right. Steve Korea is conscious. He's been there, he's done that. They say that in English. It's a saying, I've been there, I've done that, which means he has the experience. And this is why out of that experience, he tells her, don't go, because I know what it is like. But she doesn't listen to Tiv Korea. She listens to her desire that she wants to go. She wants to go to France. She thinks that if she goes to France, she would become, of course, France is the dreamland for her, that she would become rich. Yeah, but she will never be white. That's the sad reality we need to understand. That she will never become white. That she doesn't have the privilege of being white. Think about Israel. We do not have the privilege of being Jewish. Israel is the state of Jews only, right? Israel is the state of Jews only. If you are a Jew, you become a citizen of Israel. That's a fact. I'm not telling you an opinion. Of course, you know that. That's a fact. And therefore, if you are born to a Jewish mother, that means you are Jewish. And therefore, you can have citizenship in Israel. Whereas I am born in Palestine, my parents were born in Palestine, my grandparents were born in Palestine, etc., etc., but we cannot have a citizenship. And therefore, we are third-class citizens. Some of us are second class, some of us are third-class citizens. The same thing. We cannot change our identity and become Jewish. Diwana cannot become white in order to have that equality. So here, this is a question. Pay attention and listen carefully. You remember right from the beginning, I said, why black girl, the title? One reason is that it's a question of identity. Identity. In the land of sad oranges, this is comparative literature, don't forget. In the land of sad oranges, the child says, I have realized after they leave Palestine, I have realized that we have become refugees. Refugees. Identity. Diwana still, when she was in Senegal, still not aware of her racial identity, which ultimately leads to racism against her. The fact that the color of her skin is black, that for a biological reason, she was created black, an African, and a woman. which adds insult to injury, of course. So you are oppressed once because you are black, then because you are a woman, you are oppressed twice. Like most of you ladies in my class now, being a woman, you understand what it means. You don't have the privilege of being treated like a man. But the worst part of it is identity, racial identity. So she's colonized, she's black, and she's a woman. And she's a maid, helper, servant, exploitation, double exploitation, triple exploitation, quadruple exploitation. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oppressed because she's a woman, oppressed because she's black, oppressed because she's African, and oppressed because she is colonized. What is left? Completely voiceless. She's not allowed to say anything. Completely voiceless. Which means what? It means this is a question of representation. Representation. Diwana is not enabled to represent herself, to speak for herself, which ultimately leads to her decision to commit suicide and say something, a strong message. So let's go back now. It's just a general discussion now of what we have been talking about. She leaves Senegal after she meets Steve Korea, and she says farewell, goodbye to her family. She goes from Senegal, they cross the Mediterranean, I think to Italy first, and then to France, where the monsieur was waiting for her. If you look at the middle of the page, when the boat landed, okay? When the boat landed, monsieur was there. After the formalities, they quickly made their way to the Côte d'Azur. She devoured everything, devoured to eat, absorb, but also she devoured with her eyes, to absorb, to look, stare. She wants to see everything. Devoured with her eyes, marveling, astonished, you know, astonished. She packed, I'm sorry, somebody's in the waiting room. Okay. All right. Sorry, she packed everything. She packed every detail into her head. It was beautiful. Of course, it was beautiful. Africa, and again, we discussed this last time. The comparison: colonial world, the center, the periphery. Okay, France, Africa, France, Senegal. So for her, Africa seemed a sordid slum place for poor people. By comparison to what? To France. But the question that she doesn't ask, what makes France beautiful? It's her. The colonial world, the center, wouldn't be as beautiful as it is without the exploitation of the colonial world. All right, this is very clear. It has to be clear for everybody. It's like one of you going to visit Tel Aviv, and then you come back and say, oh my God, Tel Aviv. شايفين وجه ربنا, as we say in Arabic, right? So beautiful. Really? Was it created like that? Not on our blood? Not by exploiting Palestinians? Not by killing Palestinians? What makes Tel Aviv beautiful? Haifa was always beautiful. Jaffa was always beautiful. It did not become beautiful because of Israelis. No. Clear? All right. Diwana still suffers from, what did we call it? Pay attention. Last time I wrote it for you. False consciousness. Clear? You remember? False consciousness. I need a definition, okay? What is false consciousness? Divana, so far, so far. Later on, that might change. Has that false consciousness. Notice, she might end up hating the color of her skin, because everything that is beautiful is white. Who decides what's beautiful and what's not beautiful? Who decides? What's the definition of beauty? Think about it. If you were born black, in a black community, in a black world, so the concept of beauty itself for you is different from the concept of beauty for somebody born in New York, Alaska, Paris. Okay? But here, think about it. You are being exploited because of the color of your skin, correct? The color of you are black, and therefore, as a white man, I can exploit you. I am more beautiful. The white world is more beautiful. I force you to believe in that. So you have a schizophrenia انفصام. Because you look at yourself, you're not white, but you believe that everything that is white is beautiful. So what happens to your relationship with the color of your skin? You don't like it. You don't like it. And you develop false consciousness. You know Michael Jackson? You know Michael Jackson, Allah yarhamu. Michael Jackson was a very handsome singer until he decided to have plastic surgery, عملية تجميل, right? To make himself white. Why? Because being white means powerful. Means being powerful. The world is controlled by what? Because he has a psychological complex. Psychological complex. He's not satisfied with the shape of his nose, with his hair. You understand? With the shape of his eyes, with the color of his skin. And therefore he wanted to change the color of his skin. All right? And this is why wherever you go in the world these days, especially in the Arab world, Africa, India, etc., people use lots of cosmetics. They want to change the color of their skin. They're not satisfied. And those cosmetics are, whitening creams, etc., are produced in Europe, in America, in the West. And we consume them because they convinced us that the color of our skin is not good enough. Think about it. Think about it, right? For Divana, look at this. Divana says, Africa seemed a sordid slum, ugly. And Africa is not actually ugly. Africa is very beautiful. Very, very beautiful, believe me. Right? But it's a mindset. It's a mindset. False consciousness. So Africa seemed a sordid slum by comparison. Towns, buses, trains, trucks went by along the coastal highway. Wow, which she didn't have back home in Africa. The heaviness of the traffic surprised her. Yes, because they don't have heavy traffic in Senegal. They didn't at the time. Don't forget 1958. We're talking about, mid 20th century. Mid 20th century. Did you have a good crossing? That's the monsieur asking her. V monsieur, she would have answered if monsieur had asked her the question. Interesting. Which means he didn't ask her. Had she been a white woman, he would have asked her that question, but he didn't. I mean, he doesn't care. I mean, what's the relationship between the monsieur and Divana? He's the monsieur, the master. She works for him. He's the exploiter. And therefore, he didn't ask her, actually. But if he If he had asked her, she would have answered, but he didn't, and therefore she didn't say anything. After a 2-hour drive, so he took her from the coast to Antibes. Antibes is the city where the family lives. It's the city where the family lives. Okay, let's see what happens now. Now we need, notice, we are trying to answer that question. Why does she commit suicide? Why does she commit suicide? So let's see what happened. Now she wanted to visit all the places, the palaces, the Eiffel Tower, to see the beautiful places in France. Okay, she's in France, so why doesn't she do that? She seems to forget who she is. So after days, weeks, and the first month went by. So she's been there for a month. The third month began. 1, 2, 3. The third month began. Diwana was no longer the joyous young girl with the ready laugh, full of life. 2 Diwanas. The African Diwana in Senegal, in Africa, ready with laugh, joyous, very happy, always smiling, and full of life. Which Diwana? The Diwana of Africa. And we have the Diwana of France. She's no longer the joyous girl. So what happened? Notice, 2 months only. And the beginning of the third month, Diwana changes. Diwana changes. The beginning of the third month. So something very serious, very radical must have happened. Something very radical, very serious must have happened that ultimately, we will see, in a second, we will see that, will lead to a radical change in her personality. In her personality. Her eyes were beginning to look hollow. Wow. You know, hollow when you don't sleep, when you're sad, when you're angry, you know, your eyes look hollow, but also when you die. And to have hollow eyes, I would say meaningless, because you know that saying which says your eye is the window of your soul, right? Your eye is the window of your soul. When your eyes look hollow, that means your soul is hollow. So something very sad and bad, terrible rather, must have happened to take away the soul of this beautiful girl. This beautiful, joyous young girl. Something horrible must have happened. So it's not easy to say, you know, that you have hollow eyes. Her glance was less alert. You know, when you are alert, as soon as somebody calls, you answer. But here she's less alert, almost lethargic, like lazy. She no longer noticed details, just generalities. She doesn't notice, you know, details like most young people do. I'm sure you do that now. You notice details. I'm sure when we finish this, as soon as we finish our class, you start thinking about details. Even, you know, and this is why I opened my camera, for example, I told you, because I know you are following and you are looking at my facial expressions, gestures, body language, details. But for Divana, you know, when you lose interest, you just look. Who cares? I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. So she no longer noticed details. She had a lot more, okay? She had a lot more work to do here than in Africa. That's one. Underline this. Clear? I said she started changing after the second month. And then I asked why. And then I, as the narrator, answered. I said she had a lot more work to do here than in Africa, which means more exploitation. More exploitation. Right? Then again, I want to remind you of the question I asked last time, because in our next story, we will raise the same question. What's the meaning of life? What's the difference between this life? How many times, and death? How many times you had Palestinians, us, our relatives, saying it? He had a haya, right? In Arabic, we say it. What's the meaning of life? We say in Arabic, right? Now, I'm saying these in Arabic because I just want you to think about it, to understand what is happening. What's the difference? What's the difference between life and death? If you die meaningfully, remember we talked about martyrs, shuhada last time. If you die meaningfully, that means you give a meaning to your life. Ghassan Kadafani, the Israelis think that they killed him in 1972, Najil Ali, etc., etc. But no, they are alive because they managed to give a meaning to their life. So you can either pay attention, Allah yarda alaykum, you can either, because this is our story here and our next story, you can either live a life like a cockroach, sarsur, you eat and you sleep. Then you have children. All right? Yeah. Cockroaches have children too. And that's it. You grow old and then you die. And then who will remember you? Okay, only your son, your daughter, etc. That's it. But what are you leaving behind? So what is this question? The question is, what is the meaning of life? Or rather, let me rephrase it so that you understand. What meaning do you give to your life? Right? Does it make sense? Okay. What meaning do you give to your life? Some people give a meaning or meanings to their life by doing something that is meaningful, very meaningful. And some people decide to give the ultimate meaning to their life by giving a meaning to their death. So a meaning to death and a meaning to life. Those are martyrs, the people who decide to do something. Nelson Mandela, for example, right? Che Guevara, Ghassan Kanafani. You know what I'm saying? So Diwana, of course, as a person who has false consciousness, okay, she wanted to go to France, she wanted to enjoy herself, eat, sleep, and then come back, marry, have children, that's it. That's it. Yeah. But can you, listen carefully now, can you define your identity as a woman, as a girl, as a man living in Gaza, in Khan Yunis, in Rafah, in Jabalia, away from Israeli colonization and apartheid? Many of us do that. Oh, والله أنا ما بحب السياسة. I don't like politics, they say. All right? Okay. But can you separate your life from Israel, Israeli occupation? That's the point. That's what I'm talking about. If you cannot, and of course you cannot, of course you cannot. What are you going to do about it? First of all, you need to decide about this relationship. Are you conscious that you are being exploited by Israel, that you are being oppressed, persecuted by Israel? If the answer is yes, and the answer must be yes, the following question, the second question would be, so what are you doing about it? Diwana in Senegal, she doesn't raise that question. Diwana gives the same answer. She says to Tiv Korea, أنا ماليش في السياسة. All right? I don't like politics. أنا مالي في السياسة. Okay. Tiv Korea says, well, you know, you're going to hate it. You're going to be exploited. No. When she goes to France, something happens. And she starts finding answers to some of those questions she has been avoiding. The questions she has been avoiding, like many of us, by the way. Like many of us. When I say, okay, boycott Tnuva, تشتروش Tnuva, because this is an Israeli product, يعني هي وقفت علي. All right, well, false consciousness. That's what it is. That's what it is. You don't believe in your own power, in your own free will. The way Diwana commits suicides is an expression of her free will. Free will. Nobody tells her to kill herself. She decides to do it. Of course, they created the conditions which forced her to come to this conclusion. Inshallah, you are following my logic. I really want you to understand this. Not because we only study it. No, because I really want you to think about it. Okay? All right. Okay, we have 7 minutes. We'll go ahead. At first, let's see the changes now. At first, her fretting was hardly noticeable. The changes, you know, that she's a little bit annoyed. Nobody noticed it. Of France, la belle France, France of freedom, etc., of liberty, she had only a vague idea, the beautiful France. So she's in France, but she knows nothing about France. How come? Because she's not allowed to leave work. She's here to serve the family. That's it. Not to visit France. So pay attention. Changes. She's conscious now. She's becoming conscious. France, La Belle France, she had only a vague idea, a fleeting vision. Just quickly, you know, she looked out of the window, she says France, that's it. French gardens, the hedges of other villas. When she looks outside the window, she sees gardens, the hedges of the other villas, the crests of roofs appearing above the green trees, the palms, that's it, trees. That's what she sees from the kitchen. Everyone lived his own life. You know the West, they are different from us, yeah? Different culture, okay. Everyone lived his own life, isolated, unlike in Africa. Shut up in his own house, very, what's the term here? Individualistic culture, a culture of individualism. Attention, please. Individualism, okay? Unlike our communal cultures in Africa, even here in Palestine. Everybody knows everybody here, right? You know, when you meet somebody, ibn Min, bint Min, all right? We know everybody here, but communal. Whereas they're too individualistic. Monsieur and Madame went out a good deal, leaving her alone with the children. Okay? Leaving her with the 4 children. The children quickly organized a mafia, and persecuted her. So she was left alone with the children who were growing, teenagers, and they started persecuting her. Why? Because, you know, they looked down on her. Black girl, let's see. You've got to keep them happy, Madam would say. Them, who are they? The children. So the Madam said, you've got to keep them happy, Madam would say. The older child, a real scamp, very naughty, very, very naughty, recruited others of like inclinations. He brought his friends. Notice this boy, the son of the family, brought others, his friends, and they played explorer. You understand? So they played the role of the colonizer. They wanted to discover things, you know, teenagers, and this is a little girl for them, a young girl rather. So they wanted to explore African, black girl. What did they want to explore? Diwana was, look at this, the savage. Diwana was the savage. Notice the inverted commas, quote unquote. Savage because she was black. She was African. And they were white. And they played the role of the colonizers. The children pestered her, tortured her. Once in a while, the eldest got a good spanking from her, having picked up phrases from the conversations of Mama, Papa, or the neighbors back in Africa, phrases in which, pay attention, this is extremely important. So the boy picked up phrases about, okay, the notions of racial prejudice, racism. We whites are superior. We whites are superior. Racial prejudice means racism, in which notions of racial prejudice played a part. He, the boy, made exaggerated remarks to his pals, to his friends. He lied, exaggerated remarks about, you know, savages, Africans, blacks, etc. The same way racist Israeli settlers talk about us, Arabs, Palestinians, etc. Okay, the last sentence, because we're going to finish. Without the knowledge of his parents, they would turn up chanting, black girl, black girl. She's as black as midnight. Very, very racist. Very racist. The children, look, black girl, black girl. She's as black as midnight. Very, very clear racism. So now if I ask you, I want you to think about it, you know, racist remarks in the story, racist discourse, racist language, etc., etc. This is a very, very clear and direct, very direct example. Okay, the children have learned from their parents this language, and it's a discourse, powerful discourse that is characterized by racial prejudice, characterized by racism. This is an expression of racism. Inshallah, if some of you next semester take literary criticism with me next semester, as I said, we will study you know, racism, discourse, power and language, ideology. We will define racism. But now I want you to define racism. In this story, there are notions of racial prejudice, and I want you to be able to give me a definition